The thing about Mark's gospel, it is quick, right? He's not going to use a couple of paragraphs like Matthew and Luke to go through this temptation and have Jesus in this duel with Satan. Instead, it's just a couple of quick sentences. The Spirit drove Jesus into the wilderness, where he was tested by Satan in the wilderness for 40 days, and the wild beast and the angels served him. That's all we got. It's also just so kind of quick transition. So in Mark's gospel, Jesus, he is not even dry from the baptism, right? He has not even toweled off. I mean, he is still listening to that Spirit saying to him, you are my beloved, and you I'm well pleased. And then he is just not even driven. The Greek really is hurled or cast. He is just cast into the wilderness right there for 40 days. And Mark wants to be sure we get that, because even though he is a person of few words, he's got in the wilderness twice. So we don't miss that, right? He is in the wilderness. From the highest moment, from the baptism waters, which is a sign of being completely enveloped and embraced and feeling totally safe, right in there to this place where it's uncertain and unclear, and you're in this place of terror, highest to the lowest, like Micah Holmes, right? Many of you know our sweet Micah. Last May, he was up here with Caleb, our high school graduates. He was being honored. The best time of Micah's life. He switched high school midway. Last 2 years, easily to say, best years of his life. Found his place, kind of a quiet kid, found this incredible group of friends. You know, and you know how it is when you're graduating from high school, right? Just that, like, just the world is your oyster. And last summer, he had this internship lined up at the public library, Westport. They were going to pay him to review video games or board games. I mean, really? Like, this is what he loves to do. He's going to spend the summer hanging out with his best friend Caleb, the whole thing, and then go off to college. And instead, right, 10 days after he graduated from high school, they found this soreness in his jaw was an aggressive rare cancer. So I think many of you know, was it 10 weeks of chemo, and then the big surgery, which was really 3 surgeries, taking his jaw out, taking his leg out, putting in his jaw, then another 18 more weeks of chemo. So much for your first semester of college, right? Just from the high to the low, kind of like Kansas City on Wednesday, right? What a day. Sun-kissed. I mean, it didn't matter if you're a football fan or not. I mean, what a perfect day. Just the feeling of the sun on your skin, kids out of class and down there throwing the football, even the beautiful Free Palestine sign at Bedford. It was just this gorgeous red and yellow everywhere. And just that tiny moment, right, where it feels like all is right with the world, everything, just this sense of people coming together. And then, like that, right, cast out, hurled, driven out, gunshot, people running for their lives. I mean, from the highest to the absolute lowest. And as if we didn't need to be reminded that we have been here before, right? I mean, Sandy Hook. What can you even say? All those first graders. And then Uvalde, all those other little kids, right? And I think part of the challenge of the wilderness we are in now is that, and if I was starting the sermon over now, with a few more days to think about it, the wilderness we are in is that we are numb. We are just unable to process it. I mean, do you all remember that in October there was a mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine? Does anybody remember that? Like 19 people were killed. Do you remember that? It was in October. Like that one kind of just kind of got filed away. And I was talking to some of our educators this week. I talked to somebody on Friday, teaches a principal at one of our more urban kind of inner city schools. And she said, you know, the kids in our class, you know, in our school, they see so much gun violence that they're really numb to it. I was like, really? You know, I believe that. And then the next day I was talking to one of our teachers at one of our wealthiest schools, one of our private schools that cost so much money. And I said, how are the kids doing at your school? And he said, they're really fine because they're really used to this. I mean, folks, really? Like, what can you say about that, that there's this kind of numbness? And we think about, how do we get so numb, right? I mean, the shopping and the distractions. I mean, during the Super Bowl, I mean, you really had to dig around to see this, but Israel, you know, launched another attack in Rafah to free, the 60 and 70-year-old hostage. And as a 61-year-old, I'm going to say that's 2 old people. 67 people were killed in that action. 67, women and children, right? And it's just like, it doesn't even make the news. You have to go online. You have to Google Rafah. You have to Google Basan. You have to look to find stories. It is not even in an hour's worth of news mentionable anymore, right? Because we're just so numb to it all. And yet, that's not the only thing in the story, right? Jesus is not just in the wilderness. Who is with Jesus in the wilderness? The Spirit and the angels that are serving him. And I think about Jimmy and Jamenda, Micah's parents. From the moment of diagnosis until they took him to Truman State in January, they didn't take a breath. I mean, those 8 months, I mean, it was like their heart outside of their body. I mean, outside of their body. Every single moment trying to see that he had the treatment, that which was the best treatment, every single thing. And the friends around him too, and Peace Church. I mean, all those meals. I coordinated the meals. You know why? A lot of people would have done it because I needed it. I needed to see that nurture. I mean, it was like edifying to me to see people trying to decide, what should I take that to? Teenage boys will want to eat, but that health-conscious adults will too. And seeing like the way people just poured their heart out in cars and sharing things, right? All that. And then the doctors too, and the nurses, and their pediatrician who has just been by their side, standing with them every single minute, right? And didn't we see the same thing on Wednesday? I mean, didn't it lift your spirits a little bit to see, I don't know if it's the CEO of Children's Mercy or who, but that woman in that red jacket, I don't know if it was Valentine's Day or Chief's Day in red, and she's just saying, you know, again, sadly, we're trained for this. You know, they're prepared for freaking mass shootings, right? And she talked about how they jumped in there and they did this and they put other kids' surgeries aside and all that. And you just see just this love. People who give their lives, right, to take care of kids. And if that's not enough, NBC has been following this one doctor in Gaza. Maybe you've seen him, Dr. Mohammed Harara. They started following him last fall when he was at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. And then he got run out of there, and he's been at Nasser Hospital, the last hospital serving 2.3 million people, the last hospital trying to operate on people without electricity while people are bombing you and soldiers are in there taking actions. And there are, do you know how many doctors there remain in that hospital to serve, you know, what is now, 30,000 people dead, another 70,000 injured, and children having their legs amputated without anesthesia. You know how many doctors are left there? 5. And he's one of them. And he's 27 years old. What does it mean that we live on a planet with people that good? I mean, really, people who are walking around every day with their heart outside of their body. That's what they're doing. He had gone home to have like a meal with his family. There's a beautiful image of him sitting there with, you know, naan and the bread and all that, and then going back. I mean, people who give their life for other people, angels. I mean, that is what we're talking, folks. I mean, and for me to sit here and say, I feel kind of down. Really? Really? I mean, do you know how many people and how much love is out there that we can draw upon to be our best selves? But it gets even better, because there weren't just angels with Jesus. Who else was there? Wild beast. I am all over that. You bet. Bring me your banned book right now, Where the Wild Things Are, okay? Because really, I think it's the wild beast that we also need. I mean, we've talked about this before, and Dr. Chance could talk to us about it a little bit more. It's ambiguous, the wild beast, this image. I mean, when I initially think of Jesus in the wilderness with the wild beasts, I think lions and tigers and bears, oh my, right? Because we're taught to look for danger, right? I mean, evolutionary, we don't have to be taught. I mean, we're on a run, we're looking for the snake in the grass or the leopard in the tree, right? Not so much the beautiful sunrise, because we are trained to stay alive, which means we are trained to look for the danger. And sometimes that danger, that wild beast, is in ourselves. And then we project that onto other people. Remember we talked about that a couple of weeks ago? The doppelganger. I got a lot, actually this really struck a chord with people. And what Naomi Klein, Jewish writer who writes about Israeli politics and other things, says is that we take what we don't like in ourselves and we project it onto the other. And I do it all the time. I talked about, you know, the person who I've kind of been wrapped around with, and her life's been too easy and everything's gone well for her, because what? I wish everything would go well for me too, right? I mean, it's my own crap. And this is my other big thing. My other big thing is that I hate anything about me that is slightly incompetent. I mean, anything that I don't know how to do really frightens me. I've gotten better at it, but like kind of basic things like how to jump a car, or how to change a tire, stuff like that. Like when something like that happens to me, I feel really insecure. And you know what I do? I get angry at everybody else around me. I'm angry at myself, but it just goes out on everybody else. Why do my parents see? You know what I mean? So we do that. And what she talks about, of course, is, Israel, right? I mean, the Jews, Hitler annihilated him. You're talking white supremacy and ethnic cleansing on steroids, killed 95% of the Jews in Poland, 3 million Jews. He killed all but 60,000. These are traumatized people. They go to Israel. There's the creation of Israel. Now they're the white people, right? And it's so painful for Israel to see that in the creation of that country, the Nakba, the Palestinians, 750,000, all those villages destroyed. And so instead they project that onto the other. And it's just this endless cycle of trauma. And I was going to preach about that today. That was going to be my trauma loop sermon. Talk about how do we break that out. But instead, I think we have to step back and think about this wild beast in ourselves too. We've talked about it, I think a couple of weeks ago too, that it's hard for us to look at our own genocide, that we went from maybe 10 or 15 million Native people to 250,000, and we want to look but not look. And so you have to ask yourself about all the mascot names we use and all the easy appropriation of Native American spirituality. And for some reason after that shooting, I thought again about the name Chiefs. This is not my number one issue, folks. Reproductive rights, feeding hungry kids, ending the war in Gaza, saving the people of Ukraine. This is higher for me than thinking about our own symbolism of that. And yet, is there not a place to also listen when people say this hurts me? And I thought about, the Cleveland Indians, right? Chiefs, Indians, not the same thing as Redskins, right? But I thought about when they changed the name after George Floyd. After George Floyd, the owner of the Indians said enough, and they became the Guardians. And in his statement, he said, because a franchise can bring a people together, not divide them. I mean, the real deeper issue right now we have is kind of trying to look at the trauma cycle, the violent cycle we have around guns. And first of all, how do two teenagers have an AR-15? Help me understand that. Why do we live in a state with the loosest gun laws in the country? Do you know the law is that you can't recklessly sell someone under 18 a gun, but there's not an age limit for carrying or possessing? Do you know that? Do you know that the people in Jefferson City passed laws that said, we here cannot follow federal gun laws without being fined? I mean, we should be enraged, folks, not numb. We should be absolutely. I mean, it's not just the woman who died and her family. These two their lives are over, right? I mean, think about last year, the murder rate was down all over this country, and it was up in Kansas City. We broke a record. I mean, there has to be some part of us now that taps into the wild beast anger, mama bear part that says, get the hell out of this state with your ridiculousness stuff, right? I mean, I don't know. Okay, that's what I mean. These sermons, I need a few more days to think through this. But the point of that is, why was Jesus in the wilderness with the wild beast? Not just why does Mark, who says so little and repeats the wilderness twice, throw in the wild beast, which Matthew and Luke leave out? And I was thinking about the fact that there's also within scholarship this idea that the wild beasts were actually comforting a companion. I mean, there's this idea that, of course, before the fall, kind of this midrashic legend that wild beast actually fed and waited on Adam and Eve. This idea that within Mark's gospel, 4 times it says was with. So when Jesus was with, and every time it's a friendly, warm association. So this idea that the wild beasts are like the lion and the lamb laying down together, this wild beast is like this idea of the day when we all live in harmony together, right? That we're comforted not just by the angels, but by the wildness around us. Some of you may have seen this story last fall about homeless guy lives in Brush Creek. I see him when I run in the morning. He's usually out there with binoculars. And like a lot of folks, he found community, safety, and a community dedicated not to drinking and drugging and that kind of thing where he could be safe. And so he lives under the bridge there, kind of at Brush Creek and Oak. And one morning he woke up and there was a giant Egyptian goose looking at him. And he was like, his friend, who's a veteran, was like, it's an Egyptian goose. I don't know that much about it, but they named the goose Ahmed. Turned out it's a Muscovy duck, but no matter what, every single morning for over a year, he would wake up and the goose duck would be looking right at him, and it became his companion. And he said it was such a gift because one of the things he really missed when he became homeless in the fall of 2020 was a pet. And so from this goose duck, he became really a scholar about all the wilderness and all the wildlife along Brush Creek. The herons and the foxes and the coyotes and all of these companions he made helped him find the strength to come out of the wilderness and become a housed person again. And I've been thinking about that, like what does it mean to think as we sit here and think, oh, we can't do anything about it. Really? The whole earth. God has put the whole earth together. God has filled us with people who amaze us with their commitment. And then God has created this world in such a fashion that we are surrounded by even wild beasts that are trying to build us up. So on Thursday, I took Marce Ireland, our 93-year-old, along with my dad, 93. She's usually sitting over here. I don't know, I guess Marce didn't come today. But I took her to lunch for her birthday. I met Marce in 1987 when I moved here as a young pastor, and we became friends. She was a member at the church where I was an associate, and then when I started St. Andrew, she started making banners and things for St. Andrew in her driveway, and she did genealogy to help us find out about my dad's family, and her son Patrick had AIDS, and he started the Walk for Life, and I would see Patrick in the hospital, and then sadly when he died, did his funeral. And all through the years, Marce, with her passion for justice and her compassion and her care, has been such a gift. So, of course, I used her birthday as an opportunity to tell her how much that had all meant to me, but to tell her that of all the gifts Marce has given me, the greatest gift is this. When one of the very first times I met her, she told me about a really large mistake that she had made in her life. Something that she had really been kind of a wild thing, kind of out of her own character. It wasn't anything that could earn a PG-13 rating in a movie, but to her, it was really unlike her. And she's mentioned that to me several times through the years, and I told her what a gift it was that she put out there, like some huge regret she had, some wildness, some part of her, as a way of kind of in a way saying, you know, this is the truth of who we all are, right? Who has not made a mistake? Who has not done something that you really don't want broadcast to the whole world? I mean, that's who we are, folks. We are all of that. We spend so much time and energy trying to not let people see that part of us, and it takes away so much of what we need to be doing, which is changing this world. So Thursday, I picked her up at Armour Home, and she got in the car, and I said, how are you doing? She said, I'm really good. I'm really good because I had this incredible dream. So we got to the restaurant, we sat down, and she said, I never, ever have dreams. I never remember any dream. And if you know Marce, she kind of grew up, she's pretty out there, and she grew up in, I think, in Joplin. She didn't have the greatest childhood. She hadn't had, a lot of things have not exactly gone her way. She said, I am so good because I had this dream, and in this dream, I was so safe. I was in some little town or village in Missouri. I don't know where it was, but I just felt overwhelmingly safe. And she said, I think it might be because last night on the news, this was the morning right after the shooting, she said there was a little boy, and he was talking about how frightened he had been, but now he was home and he felt safe. She said, I think this dream, it was like a gift from God, a gift telling me that I'm safe and I'm okay. What if the whole earth, what if every bit of this earth has been created, angels and wild beasts, as a way of building us up, right? When we are down and low, remembering there is a 27-year-old physician out there, folks. Really. 27. Little kids, people with no anesthesia. And he's out there giving everything, right? Love builds up. What does it mean this season for us to decide, I'm going to take the angels, I'm going to take the wild beast mama bear too, I'm going to bring that all together. But we can try to get our way out of this wilderness closer to the beloved community that God calls us all to live in. Amen.
Amen.